for me too. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Alexander Kotov, and I'm working for Vodafone. And yes, microphone a bit close. I'm working with Vodafone, and that was cable and wireless, and I've been working for 11 years for this company, and I was actually recently, in the recent years, actually involved in the building up of the Ukrainian networks on the Ukrainian market, and I really got a certain vision of the things going on here I would like to share with you, with the local audiences. Here's the agenda of my presentation today. That's the geopolitical status of Ukraine and Europe, and how Ukraine performs on any trade penetration, and is optic fiber available throughout the country, and that's local Ukrainian I-access versus European and Russian I-access and their position on the market, and that's the destiny of the underwater cable systems like ITUR, BS, Fox, and the prospects for new ones, and that's transport networks of international operators printed here, and that's a brief overview. Local players on the internet market, and channels, rentals, and market share of operators. And as a summary, as a wrap-up based on the information in the first part, we'll try to come up with some conclusions and look at the picture of what was really going on here. Now, that's a pretty interesting slide. And it's a little bit outdated, but I like it really very much, as it provides a clear idea of what's going on the internet within just 1 minute of your time, just to understand what we're dealing with and what position Ukraine's holding about all this. Every minute, what happens? Every minute there's an infection of 135 computers. So there's 5 Wikipedia articles published, and 20 passwords compromised. 200 million plus emails, 300 new mobile units, 40,000 apps to be downloaded, sales for the amount of $83,000, 61,000 hours of music listened to, and 100 new accounts on LinkedIn, pop up on Twitter, 120 new accounts, and 120,000 new tweets, and on Facebook, that's 277,000 logins and 6 million viewings of pages, and Google processes over 2 million queries every minute, 300 hours video, and 3 million viewings of video on YouTube every minute. So that's a giant scale. That's a crazy, gigantic scale. Speaking about what internet does to our life, and it's the real picture. Today, the number of devices on the internet is equal to the number of the Earth's population, and by 2015, it's going to double now over the U.S. population. So you can see the clear trend where we're going. And in 2015, we'll need 5 years to have watched have viewed all the video that penetrates through the internet every second. So you can clearly see the scale. Now, what's going on in Ukraine about this? Just a little geopolitical tour. In Ukraine, first of all, the geography of Ukraine, according to one of the options, here is the geographic center, not far from Europe, not far from the city of Ternopil, and we don't know who and how measures that, but Ukraine is A's and it's in the very center of Europe. We need to understand that Ukraine is third in acreage and area country in Europe after Russia and Turkey, and the population of Ukraine 45.5 million people, and that's by the beginning of 2012 is the largest country in Europe and population. And so the audiences, the floors consuming those services are very important. And concerning internet penetration, I will not just plumb the figures, but this presentation will be available in both in English and Russian on ENOG website. But it's interesting that, for example, Ukraine is in 33rd position globally and in 10th position in Europe on number of internet users. And on penetration, on internet penetration, Ukraine is in 137th position with 33.3%, and that's pretty fresh data, updated data, and from different sources I've chosen. And while if we look into the dynamics of growth, then back in 2000 there was about 200,000 users of internet. In 2010 2010, that was about 15 million users of the internet in Ukraine. So the internet penetration in Ukraine is actively growing, and there's still enough space for growth for internet penetration to last. And Ukraine today is holding a merited 10th position in Europe, which is very typical. If on population it's eighth, and on internet penetration is far from being most advanced. It's in 100+ position in the world. Then the total number of internet users in Ukraine, that is in 10th position in Europe. That's a pretty much a value on total number of users. So what makes Ukraine so much available and affordable for the end user, and why is the internet in Ukraine so actively developing? Due to the local legislation and the condition in Ukraine, we have a pretty favorable environment for the development of DWDM systems, and the building of an optic cable line is way lower compared to Russia and Europe. And one of such examples is the company Tarcom that has built up optics for most both mobile and fixed operators, and most operators have built up and are operating their networks on their optics. Adrocom is not a com provider which sets it off against the other companies, and they only build and maintain optics for all the operators like Vodafone, Kyivstar, MTS, and the others. And this slide actually allows you to have a look at how far the penetration of optic systems in Ukraine is, how deep it is, and not every European country may boast this vast coverage. And Ukraine also has two more operators having their own optic networks, and that Eurotrans Telecom and Ukr Telecom being the absolute leader with the longest network, optic networks. That's Eurotrans has about 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers length of their optic lines throughout Ukraine. And so one of the unique phenomena, one of the unique things for Ukraine is Ukraine traffic exchange points. Here, Ukraine is absolutely a unique specimen, and there's no other place else in the world that you will have this. And I'm not going to talk about the reasons why I-axis have appeared that much, and in the view you're viewing them, and you know them far better than me. And if you just blunt the figures that are presented, it looks very funny. For example, the first and oldest UAIX, an installation of a 10 gig portal was about like per month, the 10 gig, 115 euros per month. Let's just keep this figure in mind. And if we talk about the detail, then installation is either 0 or 150 euros, depending on certain conditions. And the monthly fee for 10 gigs is 350 euros, and that's a little bit higher and looks like a realistic figure. If we're talking about gig and net, then it's about 420 euros. And I can also mention one of the I-axis that is present in Ukraine, and that's Data IX. And it rolled out recently, and it presents connectivity with the Russian sites, and including of contactee traffic, and the prices are a little bit different, about 8 hryvnias per megabit, and that's 0.72 euros. And if you analyze the figures, then the cost of megabit on UAIX is 0.0 something, 15 euro cents. Then cost per megabit on data IX is 3.5 euro cents, and the cost of megabits on data is 5.4 euro cents, and then data X is 7.2 euro cents. That's different figures you can see, and they vary. If you look into the Russian and European analogies, then all the data I've got are taken from credible sources, and I just put them all together in a bunch. So now MSK IX, that's about $2,500, which is quite a bit by Ukrainian measure, and megabyte is about 25 cents. So we get back and look into the price per megabit, like 0.1 euro cent in UAIX, then you will see the difference. And They said about the installation is about 2,000 euro per month at 2,000 euros, which is about $0.3 per megabit, or euros per meg, not $0.3 per megabit. And they see that the same service, not much different from each other, but they charge differently. But how come could it be 2 to 3 cents on exchange for Ukraine, and in Europe it's tenfold? About tenfold. That's some food for reasoning that will serve us right at the end of the presentation. And now yet another interesting thing that I was involved in recently, and I was interested where are the underwater cable systems in Ukraine and what's their status and condition. And so the situation is really sad because in Ukraine there are 2 underwater systems available. That's ITUR, and that's Turkey, Ukraine, Russia, and Italy. And that's an old PDH system that's there's only a couple STM ones that are operable, and it doesn't make sense to commercially operate the system because it's pretty outdated and it's pretty difficult to maintain. It'll be closed down. It doesn't make sense to hold the HR there. Pretty soon it'll be closed down. The next system that was landed there in Odessa is Bay Ace Fox. That's a Black Sea system. But there was another funny incident that happened to it, and there was a funny terminal that when a segment of cable was simply stolen from it, from Odessa to Novorossiysk, from Novorossiysk through Odessa to Istanbul. So the consortium decided that it didn't make sense to reinstate that cable to because they were afraid it will be stolen again. So the 2 existing cable systems that had been plotted to Ukraine had never been used for internet, largely speaking, and now very slowly they are closing down. But is that really that bad? No, not really. And what I was involved in the recent half year, the recent 6 months, we have an idea to get a new cable plotted down the Black Sea from Alupka to Sinop, Turkey, or Odessa, Istanbul, depending on the technology. And this cable will be needed by ourselves to either back up the European Express gateway or for our own needs, because we got a Vodafone Turkey, and that's a company in need of more routes from Turkey to Europe. Therefore, that part of the route could potentially be used, and for Frankfurt, it will be pretty much efficient and good on delays. Now we're working pretty closely on the comparison between all the costs and figures and facts, and it's highly probable that will happen pretty soon, and we're open for partnerships. So such cable systems are always being built in consortiums, so if an operator wants to participate in a consortium, so we already had a negotiation with some of them, so you are welcome. Now, let's get down to the things you already know, all of you know, and that's some sort of little brief in one slide. And this is just to ask you which one of the international operators are present here in Ukraine with their networks. Pentel was the first one. That was Memorex to be then at that time, and it was taken over by different players regularly. Now that's Ukr Telecom and its subdivisions, and they got actually one of the arms that goes from the border to Kiev, and the next one is GTS. But if GTS used to have a cable system before to Kiev, plotted to Kiev, now it ends up in Lvov, and actively on the transit market on channel brands, GTS does not play an active role, but it might potentially provide service from Lvov to abroad. Well, I was told 25 minutes I was given, but anyway. Now about Vodafone, pretty fast. I don't know what you know about Vodafone, but just in a nutshell, that's a little piece of the European network, and Vodafone is the world's largest mobile company, and we self-operate in 21 countries, and we got about 40 million users. And after Vodafone bought cable, then the total volume, that's over 1 million kilometers of own networks, and so subsequently that's only a European segment, and it's presented just like that in Asia and in Central Eastern and Australia. And there's 2 Ukrainian routes that are displayed here that go over here, and now our network ends up on the border of Russia and Ukraine, and it's used for transiting express gateways and Kiev. Yes, from Kiev we have 2 independent routes that we already have activated, 2.5 25 terabytes, and on delayed northern route is 25 milliseconds, and the southern is 30 milliseconds. So, and Moscow delay is 17 milliseconds. Actually, this is the IP network that we've built back in August, and that's the topology of the IP network that comes over here. And the Kiev node is a close part of the nucleus of the core of the network. 25 nodes in Europe, Prague, Budapest, to Frankfurt, and we're starting to provide services on this node. It's just to say that we're not playing on cogent price category, but that's the node that is really top-notch in cutting edge and telco art. If the transmission is on thin air, ecstasy on 100 gig lambdas and 500 transponders, and all the local operators and the way they're presented in here, and I don't think we don't need to get into details talking about them. One of the most interesting things is here, and that's the picture of a couple of days ago, and that's a market share in the Ukrainian market from a source. And the most important, the top thing that what it was about is that indeed, according to ITU report, Ukraine in 2012 was in third position from top on cost of the internet for the end user, and the little research showed it wasn't so, because for the end user, internet of Ukraine is the cheapest in the world, and that's a given fact. On this, all right, with this positive note, let me interrupt your presentation because we got a schedule, and please don't wander off, because at the end of our presentation we're going to have a Q&A session, and Q&A session, yes, and I assume that the question of why is the internet cheapest in the world in Ukraine will be raised and discussed by the participants of this meeting, of this session in full. Thank you very much, Alex.